Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre. In today's video, we're gonna dive a little bit deeper in the world of mother-in-laws. Now before we get started with the first story, I would like to invite you guys once again to go to the Lost Genre subreddit and join. In it, you can share your story or cross-post another one for me to feature in one of my videos. Okay, now let's start with the first story. My husband and I moved to Australia 10 years ago and have been begging mother-in-law to come out for a holiday ever since. So this year she finally agreed, provided we pay for the tickets from the US. Since she was coming for 6 weeks, we took a lot of trouble to clear out our spare room, even repainting and installing an air conditioning for her. She was fascinated with the idea of spending Christmas in the middle of summer and told us she was really looking forward to the novelty of eating her Christmas lunch on the beach where we live. This is a tradition in Australia and we love it. Plus we thought it would be a new cultural experience for a woman who spent her whole life in the northeastern US. The minute she stepped off the plane, the complaints began. The flight was too long. What did she expect? The seats were uncomfortable. She had trouble understanding the airline staff. Some of them had Australian accents. Takes some getting used to, but it's not another language. But the very best bit, after all our explanations about just how hot December can be in Sydney, she gets off the plane wearing a New York winter coat over jeans and a thick wool jumper. She almost collapsed from the heat the second she stepped outside the airport. Then, on the drive to our house, she started complaining about the fact that Australians drive on the left. She said she couldn't feel safe. She actually screamed when she saw oncoming traffic, nearly causing my husband to have an accident. When she arrived at our house, which is in a good part of Sydney, she said it seemed provincial. Then, she opened my fridge and started inspecting the food inside it, poking and prodding it like it was from another planet. She hated the garden because the trees looked strange. She refused to eat the shrimp my husband barbecued for her because they looked funny. She criticized our decorating, complained that the air conditioning would hurt her sinuses, and complained that the heat was unbearable. She was still wearing jeans at this point, at a time of year where most people shed as many clothes as possible. She moaned about the height of the surf. We live on one of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen. The one that got me the most was that she hated the fact that my kids have Aussie accents. They were born here. All that would have been bearable until Christmas Day. She refused to get up early, so the poor kids had to wait and wait for their presents. She told my husband that she couldn't take any of her gifts home with her because she didn't want to pay for excess baggage. We were paying for her flights, remember? She told my daughter that she looked ugly in her new clothes and told my son it was weird wanting paint and other art supplies instead of toys. She refused to go swimming with us after the presents were opened, even though the kids were desperate to try their new surfboards and show off to grandma. Then she announced that she couldn't possibly eat Christmas lunch on the beach because 1, there was too much sand, and 2, it wouldn't feel like Christmas. So, at 10 a.m. on Christmas Day, we totally reorganized everything to accommodate her. We agreed to eat a cold Christmas lunch in our backyard, which is right next to that terrible sandy beach anyway, and then we'd have some sort of late meal that was more like what she was used to. This meant my husband and I spent all day in the kitchen instead of playing with our kids. She spent a huge amount of time calling all of her friends in the US to tell them about how weird Christmas Down Under was. How rude. She spent half the day sitting on her backside watching TV and moaning that she couldn't find her favorite programs. When Christmas lunch was finally served, she just picked out a salad and made rude remarks about how strange our food looked. It's very traditional in Australia to eat cold seafood during the hot part of the day for Christmas and then eat the turkey and ham and hot food when it cools down in the evening. I could go on about the misery of the next 5 weeks of her visit, but I'll just finish mentioning that we cried with relief when we put her on the plane back to New York. And some people just have to take their country with them when they travel. Why would you agree to travel to a country that of course isn't yours and has a different culture if you're gonna complain about it having a different culture? Personally, I've been blessed with the chance to travel a lot and actually live in other countries. And in the beginning, it's not easy until you figure out that you can't take your country with you. Things will be different, and if you keep comparing this new place to where you came from, you're always going to have a bad time. Also, this mother-in-law just made it so much easier to never get an invitation anywhere ever again. Who wants to hang out with somebody that complains the whole time about every little thing? What do you guys think? You think she got invited again for Christmas? Alright, let's move on to the next story. I guess this all boils down to the fact that my mother-in-law is still trying to hang on to her son and control his life. This is easy for her since she doesn't drive and never has, and my dear husband is too kind-hearted. This has been going on since we first started dating. She seems to think that she can tag along everywhere we go and feels she has the right to invite herself along because she doesn't drive. At first, I saw this as just a charmingly close relationship, but that soon changed. At first, I didn't mind if we were going shopping to take her along, or, since she liked to dance, dear husband and her took country line dance lessons before we met, taking her along when we went to a country bar or nightclub. But then she would get mad when he would dance with me more than her, or if there was no one else to dance with. Therefore, she would sit and pout all night. After only taking her along a few times, she expected to go along every time we went out. If he told her we wanted it to just be the two of us, like a real date, maybe going out to dinner beforehand, she would throw a tantrum because she wasn't invited along. So we had to start lying to her about where we went on the weekends. And that's when the competition began. If she knew or suspected that we had plans, she would suddenly say that she had to go shopping for this or that, or go for groceries. Remember, she doesn't drive. She would then poke around while shopping. She said it would just be a quick trip, while I'm sitting at home waiting for him to pick me up to go out. This caused many fights because, like I said, he's too kind-hearted and fell for her BS every time. It took some time for him to start standing up to her, and when he did, it got blamed on me. I was tearing him away from his family. All because we wouldn't drag her butt along on all of our dates, and because he wasn't always readily available to be her taxi service anymore. This continued throughout our 6-year relationship, even though he made it clear to her that if we had plans, he wouldn't postpone or cancel them to suddenly take her somewhere, which I appreciated, but that's when his life at home became a living hell. He has an older brother who still lives at home, but she expects very little of him and never dares to try to invite herself along with him. He participates in some activities which may be illegal, can't keep a job steady, and does nothing around the house. Yet, he can do no wrong in mother-in-law's eyes. The way she treats him and my dear husband is like night and day. When my dear husband finally started standing up to her, his brother and her made his life hell. He paid the cable bill, but could never watch TV or tape anything. He couldn't do his laundry because when he would start it, his brother or mother would suddenly decide they had to do theirs, and even went so far as to take his wet laundry out and throw it on the floor. He started spending more and more time at my mom's house, where I lived, and even brought his wash over, and my mom did it for him, which really upset his mom. But even through all this, if we were out in public with his mom, for whatever reason, she would act so sweet to both of us, and she continued to try to invite herself along everywhere we went. She even went so far as to call the bowling alley and join the league we bowled in last year. She didn't even inform us of this until the first night of the league. She just came out and said, "Oh, what time is the organization meeting? I'm bowling this year, so I'm going along." What were we supposed to say? Needless to say, it only lasted one season because it's a late league, 9 to 11 p.m., and she said it was too late for her. Now we are married and have moved 3 miles out of town, closer to the bowling alley. But for the second half of the season, we were stuck running her all the way into town and back out to our house. Little does she know, we're joining an earlier league next year. Hopefully she doesn't find out and calls them up to join. She doesn't ask first, as you can tell, because she knows what we'll say. She never even liked to bowl before. She does things out of spite just to irritate me. and knowing that my dear husband doesn't always say no. When we bought our house, mother-in-law tried everything to talk him out of it. And the weekend we had closing on our house and moved, mother-in-law locked herself in her bedroom and cried to try and make him miss settlement on the house, which he didn't. He told her he can't wait to get out of this hellhole she calls a home. His spine was shining. I was so proud. Needless to say, not one member of his family helped us move that weekend, while my whole family and our friends were more than happy to. You should have seen their faces when 15 people in 7 or 8 trucks showed up at mother-in-law's to start loading up. And they thought they were hurting us by not helping. Surprisingly, they didn't cause any trouble the day of our wedding, which shocked me. She had a good time that day trying to pretend she was this wonderful, loving person, which my family and most of her friends know is not true. Since then, she seems to think everything is okay and calls constantly asking my dear husband to take her here and there or come to her place and do stuff for her. For example, I made the mistake of telling her we were going to decorate for holidays the weekend before Thanksgiving, just because we wanted to. So she had to have hers done too. She called the day we were going to do it and asked if dear husband could just come in and carry a few boxes of decorations up from the basement. He left at 11 a.m. He came back at 6 p.m. I have never been so mad at him. Seems a few boxes that she wanted carried up turned into setting the tree up for her, having all the lights, and taking her to the department store. That alone took 2 hours, he told me. He was mad at her too, but every time he tried to leave, she told him what an ungrateful son he was and how he thinks he's better than everyone else now because he has his own house. I was so upset that I told him if this ever happens again, I'm leaving. I also told him under no circumstances would I come second behind his mother, and that when we married, he took a vow to me, and his first priority now is me and our house. And if she ever says anything like that again, I'll finally tell her exactly what I think of her. I guess my outburst worked because she found out we were taking our decorations down yesterday, and she called yesterday morning to ask if dear husband could come in there and take her decorations down for her. He told her no, because we were doing ours, and then we were going to a friend's house to watch football. She started to get nasty with him and he said, "I don't know when I can, Mom, but not today." She said, "Okay, whatever," and hung up on him. Yippee! I think we're on the right track now. Well, that mother-in-law is a piece of work. Whew. I'm only going to say one thing. That's the type of mother-in-law or relative that is going to end up alone in some nursing home with no visitors. Because let's face it, older brother, he doesn't care about anybody but himself, so he's never going to go there. And Dopey's husband is not gonna even want to get close to his mother because she's so manipulative, let alone OP. Why would she want to visit a mother-in-law that's made her life so miserable? So yeah, this woman is gonna end up alone. That's sad. Alright, now let's move on to the final story. This is the second marriage for both of us with children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Everything started out fine, but mother-in-law started complaining about little things. She interfered so much that she took my husband to court because we didn't want the boys going over there as much. Every time they did, we had problems. Well, it's been 5 years since we went no contact. She had to have total control and didn't know when to back off. She also verbally abused my 7-year-old daughter behind my back, telling her not to tell me. When I found out, that ended everything right there. It's really too bad that some mother-in-laws never know their places. We could have all gotten along beautifully if she just had been grandma and not try to take over. She raised her own and should let us do the same. Trying to spoil grandkids is fine if you don't see them that much, but when you're trying to raise them, that won't work. 2 marriages are hard enough with children, jobs, sports, etc. No one needs an interfering mother-in-law. We tried many times to talk to her and it never worked. She just had to have everything her own way. Even telling me how to cut my daughter's hair, what she should eat, and if she needed a new pair of sneakers or not. I'm not kidding. We are two hard-working, responsible parents. We were coming home at night after work, cooking, helping with homework, school, soccer, baseball, and had to listen to my mother-in-law who never worked and had all day to do whatever. Sometimes when you do it all and that isn't good enough, it's just better to break away. I think mother-in-laws should learn their place when their sons get married. Be there to visit, but let them lead their own lives. You will enjoy and be welcomed. Don't pick at everything. I have daughters, but I know I will be a better mother-in-law because of what happened to me. Remember, they are not your kids, they are your grandchildren, and they also need to grow up with rules just like we did. And I think I'm a good person because of it. Well, I've got absolutely nothing to add to that. I completely agree with OP. She just said it all. Boundaries and roles. That's incredibly important. And what she said about her being a better mother-in-law because of what happened to her, I absolutely believe that. I'm sure OP will be a fantastic mother-in-law because she will be completely aware of her place and what she can and must not do. What do you guys think? How right or wrong do you think OP is on this one? Alright, well, once again, we've reached the end of the video. If you liked it, go ahead and click like, maybe share it if you think this video will help somebody. If you have not joined the community yet, go ahead and click subscribe, it's really easy. Alright, having said all that, I'll see you guys on the next video.